They say in the village of Udo that when Mama Adana died alone in her small hut behind the market, every yam in the surrounding farms turned black overnight. The old woman whispered that tears were seeping into the soil, poisoning the earth to punish the daughter who had forgotten where she came from. Hi, my beautiful people. How are you doing today? Thank you so much for your support so far. Quickly, let's dive into this thrilling story. I assure you, it will be truly awe-inspiring. Let's go. In the bustling market of Udo village, where palm oil sellers called out their prices and yam traders arranged their wares in neat rows, Mama Adana was known for her delicious Akara. Her small wooden stall, covered with a blue tattered umbrella, drew people from 3 villages away. They said her bean cakes were so light they could make a sad man smile again. Every morning before the sun woke, Mama Adana would soak her beans, watching the water turn milky as she peeled off their brown skins. Her daughter Adana would help her, their hands working together in the dim light of dawn. The cold water made Adana's small fingers wrinkle, but she never complained. She watched how her mother moved with certainty, knowing exactly how much water was needed, how long to soak the beans before the skins would slip off easily. Their one-room home sat behind the market, its zinc roof patched in 3 places where the rain leaked through. The walls were painted blue, though the colour had faded to a pale ghost of itself. Mama Adana had covered one wall with pictures: Adana's school certificates, a calendar from the local church, and a faded photograph of Adana's father taken 2 weeks before he died of fever. Life moved in its own rhythms. On Mondays, they would buy fresh peppers from Mama Chioma's stall, the old woman always adding a few extra ones for good luck. Wednesdays were market cleaning days, when all the traders would sweep their areas before the chairman's inspection. Saturdays were the busiest, with people coming from neighbouring villages to buy and sell. Money never came easily. Each evening, Mama Adana would count coins at their small wooden table, sorting them into neat piles: school fees, rent, food, savings. Sometimes, when sales were poor, she would skip her own dinner, telling Adana she wasn't hungry. But in the quiet of night, Adana would hear her mother's stomach growling. "Why do you work so hard, Mama?" Adana asked one evening, watching her mother's hands shake with exhaustion as she prepared the next day's bean paste. "Because education is like a torch," Mama Adana replied, her eyes fixed on her work. "It lights the way forward. Your father wanted you to be educated, to speak good English like the big people in Lagos. Me, I didn't go to school, but you will be different." School became Adana's second home. She would run there early each morning, her uniform crisp despite being washed and ironed 100 times. While other students complained about homework, Adana saw each assignment as a step toward a better life. She would study by kerosene lamp late into the night, using old newspapers her mother brought home to practice her English. Mrs. Okonkwo, her primary 6 teacher, took special interest in her. "That girl will go far," she told Mama Adana during a parent-teacher meeting. "She has something special in her eyes, a hunger to succeed." The market women became Adana's extended family. They watched her grow, contributed to her school fees when things were tight, and shared in Mama Adana's pride at her daughter's achievements. Even the stern market chairman would ask about her progress whenever he passed their stall. Secondary school brought new challenges. The fees were higher, the books more expensive. Mama Adana took on more work, adding catering for local events. She would stay up late preparing orders, her eyes red from pepper smoke, her feet swollen from standing all day. But it paid off when Adana started bringing home prizes. First position in mathematics, best student in English language, overall best student in her class. Each certificate went up on their blue wall, covering the patches where the paint had peeled away. Change came slowly at first. It started with small things, the way Adana began to hesitate before speaking their local language, preferring English even at home. The way she stopped helping at the stall during holidays, saying she needed to study. The way her eyes would drift away when market women stopped to greet her, as if she were already seeing beyond their small world. When the WAEC results came out, Adana scored straight A's. The news spread through the market like fire in Harmattan. Market women danced, customers congratulated Mama Adana, and even the stern chairman smiled. That evening, they organized a celebration at Mama Adana's stall. Women brought jollof rice, chicken, and soft drinks. Someone brought a small radio that played high-life music late into the night. The day the University of Lagos admission letter arrived, Mama Adana cried tears of joy. The market women gathered around, some crying too, others dancing, and praising God. They all contributed what they could: money for transport, boxes for her things, advice about life in the big city. The night before Adana left for university, she sat with her mother in their small room. Mama Adana held her daughter's hands, rough against smooth. "Remember where you come from," she said softly. "No matter how far you go, don't forget the hands that lifted you up." Adana hugged her mother tight, promising she would never forget. She meant it then, with all her heart. But Lagos was waiting, and with it, changes neither of them could have imagined. The University of Lagos was different from anything Adana had known. The buildings rose tall and modern. The students walked with sophisticated confidence. For the first time, Adana felt conscious of her worn sandals and simple clothes. Her roommate, Chinenye, came from a wealthy family in Port Harcourt. She had clothes from London, spoke with a slight foreign accent, and spent weekends at expensive restaurants in Victoria Island. "Let me help you," Chinenye said one evening, going through Adana's clothes. "You're pretty, but these village clothes won't do. You need to upgrade." And so the transformation began. Chinenye taught Adana how to dress properly, how to style her hair like Lagos girls, how to speak so people wouldn't know she came from a village. Each new change made Adana feel more distant from Udo Market, from her mother's Akara stall. The first time she went home for holidays, the market women noticed the difference. Her hair was styled differently, her clothes more fashionable, her manner more distant. She no longer sat with her mother at the stall, saying the smoke would spoil her new clothes. Only Mama Chioma shook her head sadly. "When a child learns to climb a tree," she muttered, "they forget that their feet still touch the ground." In her final year, Adana met Olumide at a student conference. He was tall, handsome, and carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who had never worried about money. His father owned a chain of hotels across Nigeria, and he drove a car that cost more than most people earned in 10 years. Their first date was at an expensive restaurant in Victoria Island. Adana felt nervous, out of place among the fine china and multiple forks, but Olumide was charming, making her laugh, teaching her which fork to use for what. "You're different from other girls," he told her that evening. "There's something special about you." Adana didn't tell him about her mother's Akara stall, about their one-room home behind the market. When he asked about her family, she was vague, saying only that they lived in a small town. Olumide introduced her to his world: exclusive clubs, expensive restaurants, weekend trips to fancy resorts. He bought her gifts, designer bags, expensive jewelry, things she had only seen in magazines before. Each gift pulled her further from her roots. The day she brought Olumide to meet her mother was a turning point. Mama Adana had prepared for days, cleaning every corner of their small home, making her special Akara with extra pepper sauce. She wore her best wrapper, the one she saved for church, and borrowed plastic chairs from neighbors. But from the moment they arrived, Adana could see the disapproval in Olumide's eyes. The way he wrinkled his nose at the market smells, the way he barely touched the food, the way he kept checking his expensive watch. Later, in his air-conditioned car, he turned to her. "You never told me. I mean, I knew you weren't from money, but—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "My family has a certain position in society. We need to think about appearances." Something inside Adana hardened that day. She began to see her background through Olumaide's eyes, not as something to be proud of, but as something to overcome, to hide. She changed her phone number, making it harder for market women to reach her. She told her mother not to visit her in Lagos without calling first. When she got a job at the bank after graduation, she gave a different hometown on her employment forms. Their wedding was a society event, featured in Lagos Life magazine. 300 guests, imported flowers, a 5-tier cake. Mama Adana sat in the back row, looking small and out of place in her new lace wrapper. None of Adana's new friends spoke to her. They assumed she was someone's housemaid who had wandered in. Life in Lagos continued. Adana had twins, a boy and a girl. She hired expensive nurses from America to care for them through lavish naming ceremonies. Her mother learned about the births from others. She saved money to buy baby clothes, wrapping them carefully in brown paper, but the package came back unopened with a note saying, "The madam didn't accept unauthorized deliveries." Mama Adana grew weaker, her once steady hands now trembling as she tried to fry Akara. The market women helped when they could, but they all had their own struggles. One hot afternoon, as the market was closing, Mama Adana collapsed beside her stall. The market women rushed to help her, calling her name, fanning her with their wrappers, but she didn't respond. They carried her to her small room, sent for the medicine man who lived near the village square, but even his strongest herbs couldn't help. As the sun set, Mama Adana opened her eyes one last time. "Tell Adana," she whispered, her voice weak but clear. "Tell her I forgive her, but let her remember, the same measure she used for me, life will use for her." Those were her last words. The market women said the ground shook slightly when she died, though there had never been an earthquake in Udo village before. News reached Lagos through the market grapevine. Adana came for the burial, dressed in expensive lace, her face hidden behind dark sunglasses. She stood apart from the market women, barely acknowledging their greetings. She paid for a fancy coffin and a marble gravestone, but the market women noticed she shed no tears. As she prepared to leave, Mama Chioma caught her arm. "Your mother's last words were of forgiveness," the old woman said. "But child, remember, every tear a mother sheds plants a seed, and those seeds always bear fruit." Life in Lagos continued as before for Adana. Her twins grew into beautiful children, attending the most expensive school in Lagos. She rose higher in her banking career, became known in Lagos society for her lavish parties. Sometimes, late at night, she would remember her mother's Akara stall, but she would quickly push the memory away. But slowly, strange things began to happen. Her twins, once loving and affectionate, became distant. They preferred their American nanny to their mother, refused to speak their local language, seemed embarrassed when their friends asked about their family background. As they grew older, they began to treat Adana with the same cold politeness she had shown her own mother. They would make excuses to avoid family dinners, wouldn't answer her calls, said they were too busy with school activities to spend time with her. One day, Adana overheard her daughter telling a friend on the phone, "My mother, oh, she's so local, always trying to teach me about village traditions and stuff. So embarrassing." The words struck Adana like a slap. They were the same words she had once used about her own mother. That night, unable to sleep, Adana went to her kitchen. For the first time in years, she tried to make Akara, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember her mother's secret recipe. The bean cakes came out hard and tasteless, nothing like the light, fluffy ones her mother used to make. As she stood in her expensive kitchen, surrounded by failed attempts at Akara, Adana finally broke down. She remembered her mother's rough hands, her tired smile, the way she would save the best pieces for her. She remembered the pride in her mother's eyes when she won school prizes, the way she would brag about her daughter to everyone in the market. Years passed. Adana's twins moved abroad for university. They rarely called, and when they did, the conversations were short and formal. During holidays, they preferred to stay with friends rather than come home. They're just busy with their studies, Adana would tell her friends, but her voice would shake slightly. She knew better. She was reaping what she had sown. One night, during a heavy storm that shook the windows of her mansion, Adana had a dream. She saw her mother's Akara stall, but it was empty. Then she heard her mother's voice, clear as if she were standing next to her. "The same measure you use for others will be used for you, my daughter. But there is still time. There is always time to change the measure." Adana woke up crying. The next day, she drove to Udo village for the first time in years. The market had changed. New stalls had replaced old ones. New faces had replaced familiar ones. But some of the old market women were still there. They found her standing in front of where her mother's stall used to be, tears running down her face. Mama Chioma, now bent with age but still sharp-eyed, approached her. "Ah, you have finally come home," the old woman said. Adana fell to her knees, not caring about her expensive dress getting dirty. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Mama." The market women gathered around her, their wrappers rustling like leaves in the wind. They helped her up, dusted her off, led her to a stool in the shade. Mama Chioma brought out a wrapped package. Inside were pieces of Akara still warm. "We kept your mother's stall," she said. "Every day, one of us makes Akara here. Not as good as your mother's, but we try. We didn't want people to forget." That evening, before leaving the village, Adana visited her mother's grave. She cleaned the marble headstone, laid fresh flowers, and made a promise. She returned to Lagos with a mission. She wrote long letters to her twins, telling them about their grandmother, about the market, about the Akara stall. She told them about her mistakes, her regrets, her hopes for forgiveness. At first, there was no response, but slowly, things began to change. Her daughter called one day, asking to learn more about her grandmother. Her son showed interest in visiting the village. Adana started a foundation in her mother's name, providing scholarships for children of market women. She visited Udo regularly, sat with the market women, learned their stories. She didn't try to make Akara again. Some things, once lost, can't be recovered. But she found other ways to honor her mother's memory. The market women say that sometimes, very early in the morning, they catch a whiff of Mama Adana's special Akara. They say it's her way of letting them know she's still watching over the market, over her daughter, over all of them. And in the village of Udo, they still tell this story, not as a tale of revenge, but as a reminder that love, though patient, keeps accounts. That success isn't measured in naira notes or fancy cars, but in the hearts we touch and the memories we leave behind. They say that after Adana started visiting the village again, the yams grew bigger and sweeter than ever before. The old women nodded knowingly. A mother's tears can poison the earth, but a daughter's redemption can make it fertile again. And so the story is told, passed from mother to daughter, a reminder that every child is a message we send to a future we will not see, and every mother's blessing or curse follows that message like a shadow. Never forget your roots. Remember those who lifted you up on their tired shoulders so you could climb higher. Mama Adana worked countless hours at her Akara stall, her hands burning from hot oil, her feet aching from standing all day. She skipped meals so her daughter could eat, wore the same wrapper for years so Adana could have school uniforms. Every coin she saved was an investment in her daughter's future. The market women who contributed to school fees, who encouraged and supported them, were part of this foundation. When success comes, it's easy to look forward and forget to look back. But our success stories don't start with our achievements. They start with those who believed in us when we had nothing. Pride and shame about humble beginnings. The way Adana began to hide her background, changing her phone number and refusing her mother's visits, shows how shame can poison our hearts. She saw her mother's Akara stall through Olomide's eyes, rather than seeing the love and sacrifice it represented. Being ashamed of humble beginnings is like being ashamed of the soil that helped you grow. Her attempt to erase her past only created a hollow space in her life that no amount of fancy clothes or expensive cars could fill. Every successful person started somewhere, and those who forget this lose a precious part of themselves. The market women's saying rings true. When a child learns to climb a tree, they forget that their feet still touch the ground. The circle of treatment life has a way of teaching us lessons through our own children. The same cold shoulder Adana gave her mother, her twins later gave to her. They became embarrassed by her attempts to connect, just as she had been embarrassed by her mother. They preferred their American nanny, avoided family dinners, and made excuses not to visit, mirror images of Adana's own behavior toward her mother. The way we treat our parents often becomes a blueprint for how our children will treat us. This circle of behavior shows us that every action we take plants seeds for the future. As Mama Chioma warned, every tear a mother sheds plants a seed, and those seeds always bear fruit. Wealth cannot replace family bonds. All the designer clothes, expensive cars, and mansion living couldn't fill the hole left by broken family bonds. Adana's expensive lifestyle brought her status, but couldn't buy her children's love or erase the pain of her mother's lonely death. The marble gravestone she bought couldn't make up for the absence of tears at the funeral. Real wealth isn't counted in bank accounts, but in the warmth of genuine relationships and the love we give and receive. The simple moments she once shared with her mother at the Akara stall were worth more than all the fancy parties and society events that filled her Lagos life. The path to true redemption. When Adana finally returned to the village, she didn't just say sorry, she took action. She started a foundation in her mother's name, reconnected with the market women, and shared her mother's story with her children. She visited regularly, sat with the market women, and learned their stories. True redemption isn't just feeling sorry. It's about making changes and trying to right our wrongs. It's about turning regret into action that helps others and honors those we've hurt. Though she couldn't recreate her mother's perfect Akara, she found other ways to keep her memory alive and help others avoid her mistakes. A mother's enduring love. Even in her final moments, Mama Adana's thoughts were of forgiveness for her daughter. Despite years of rejection and loneliness, her love never turned to hate. This teaches us about unconditional love, the kind that continues giving even when it receives nothing in return. She saved money to buy clothes for grandchildren she never met, kept praying for a daughter who rarely called, and died still believing in the goodness of her child. A mother's love is like the sun, continuing to shine even when clouds block its light from reaching us. Her last words were of forgiveness, showing that true love transcends hurt and disappointment. The seeds we plant. Every choice we make plants seeds for our future. Adana's early choices to reject her background planted seeds of distance and disconnect that grew in her own children. But when she chose to return and make amends, she planted new seeds of healing and connection. The market women said the yams grew sweeter after Adana's return, showing that when we choose to do right, even the earth seems to celebrate with us. The legacy we leave isn't just in what we achieve, but in how we treat others and the values we pass on to the next generation. The power of community and tradition. The market women's commitment to keeping Mama Adana's memory alive by continuing to make Akara at her stall shows the strength of community bonds. They preserved not just a business, but a legacy. Their wisdom, passed down through generations in sayings and stories, carries deep truths about life and relationships. The village of Udo itself becomes a character in the story, showing how our communities shape us and hold our histories. Even when Adana tried to distance herself, these bonds remained, waiting for her return. This teaches us that true community transcends social status and time, providing a foundation we can always return to when we lose our way. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and turn on your notification so you won't miss more beautiful stories to come.